All right, another edition of the a different kind of power rankings, analytical power rankings. I just have it up on the screen. We're just jumping right into it real quick. If you haven't seen one of these before, I've done like 20 of these. I still don't know exactly the quickest way and simplest way to explain it. But basically, looking at past success of previous teams, it's a win total is equated to each position grouping depending on what tier you are in. At the bottom of the screen, you can see where the tiers are, and then, at the top of the screen, you're going to see each team and where their tiers ranked and how many wins that got them to, instead of all the way at the right, that's how many wins you would expect them to get given where they are at every single position grouping. So let's start off with number 32, the Detroit Lions, who have some nice stuff on offense, but their offense has definitely cooled off, so it's not as good as we've seen it be in years past. Defense, still struggling. The coverage unit is definitely struggling. I think they've had some pass rushers have good games. We saw Aiden Hutchinson kind of wake up. Maybe maybe wake up is too strong, but we saw him kind of look like the number 2 overall pick this past game. Maybe if he can be sort of, continue to grow, that pass rush could get better, but, as a whole, there's some holes on this Lions team. The Chicago Bears are here at 31, who, again, offense really struggling here. To have, they've been blocking all right, and they've been covering all right, actually, but that's pretty much been it. They made their field goals. That's good as well. For the kicking, I've just used kicking percentage. Everything else I use PFF grades. That's where they're at. Number 30, somehow the Arizona Cardinals are all the way this far back. I remember the power rankings really hated them last year when they were 8-0, but the power rankings was always lower on them than you'd expect given their record. But, defense has been a mess. That's just been the issue. The good thing about them, though, is that while the wide receiving core is currently tier 4, with DeAndre Hopkins back, that could easily be tier 2, if not tier 1, because he does mean so much to that team. That could also allow Kyler to play better than a tier 3 quarterback. So, while yes, you are 30th right now, the fact that you have Hopkins back really does change the makeup of this team, but just how much. So that's where they're at here. Number 29, the New York Football Giants, who are still somehow, very much at the bottom here. They are the 4th worst team. The power rankings hates them. Well, let's talk about why it does. It's actually given some credit to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has performed well, and interestingly enough, it doesn't have Barkley as a tier 1 running back. I would give him tier 1 running back status. I would bump that up to 0.97. That's personally what I would do. So, maybe add half a win there. That's still not giving them, even moving them up a spot, but it makes them look a little bit better. Offensive line's been inconsistent. Receiving core hasn't been great. And PFF doesn't love the Giants defense. So if you are a fan of the Giants defense, maybe you'll disagree with that and say, hey, they should be higher because of that. It does feel like, though, they are a team that's punching above their weight, but maybe there's something that PFF is missing, and maybe there's something that I'm missing that's allowing them to be so successful, despite the fact that it looks like they don't have much talent. Number 28, we have the Balls, the Washington football team here, who, again, there's things to like about this team. One thing that's interesting is the receiving core has been a disappointment, although Terry McLaurin coming off a great game against Green Bay. The quarterback play hasn't been great, but, Taylor Heineke did some nice things. I'm not sure if he's going to be great, but maybe you can get better if he's playing. The defense still, is fine. It has some solid pieces, but isn't a complete defense. Number 27 is the Indianapolis Colts here, who, again, a little bit lower than maybe I would have expected because I've been doing these every few weeks, so I'm always interested in seeing where they'll be at. I thought the defense, you could argue, should be better than how it's graded so far. Solid run defense, solid coverage unit, not really much of a pass rush, which that checks out, but I feel like the coverage has at times looked a lot better, so maybe you hope the defense can play a little bit better. Matt Ryan has been tier 4 quarterback. That even feels a little bit generous to me. The receiving core actually hasn't been the issue, but the offensive line's been rough. The running game has been rough. So, Colts, we expected them to be good with certain things this season, and those things just haven't been good, which is why they've kind of limped along. But hey, you're still 500. Still plenty of time to get it together. Number 26, another team, both these New York teams that people are very excited about are on this bottom panel. For the Jets, it's entirely their offense. The PFF does not like their offense one bit. They don't like their offensive line, quarterback play, or receiving core. All of that is tier 5, and I kind of get it. I do kind of get it. I can see that. The running game's been solid, but again, you just lost Breece Hall, so that's the issue. But the bright side is that they have a really good defense, and a great defense, in fact. So that doesn't get better than that. I mean, it technically can. They have a tier 2 run defense instead of tier 1, but other than that, defense has been fantastic, and that's what's been winning them games. You just hope that you get maybe a little bit more value from the receiving core and quarterback play. If you can get that, they can be a playoff team. And how about 25, the Texans? Texans have not been atrocious this year. They're still the Texans. They're still not great. They're still a few years away, but there's some things to like about it. Davis Mills has played solid football. He's not great, but he's played well. I think that he's, had a solid season. Again, I don't know what his ceiling is. He's kind of in that Gardner Minshew scenario where there's things to like about him, but what's his ceiling? But still, offensive line's done it a little bit. Wide receiving core has done a little bit. Running game has been, you could even argue tier 1 with Dameon Pierce. He's been very good, but tier 2 does check out for me. Coverage has been solid. Not a lot else on the defense, which is why they're still losing games. But hey, there's things to like about the Texans team. They're competent, I would say. Next tier, I think we have a couple of surprises in this tier. So the Jacksonville Jaguars at 24. This checks out. This feels about right. Listen, we got very excited about them 3 weeks into the season, but have definitely cooled off since then. Trevor Lawrence looked really good for a few weeks, but has definitely cooled off. He's tier 4 quarterback now. The receiving core, Christian Kirk has gotten the yards, but as a whole, this receiving core has still been not great. Tier 4 right now. Defense has played well. Defense, you would like the coverage to be a little bit better. It's tier 4, but other than that, they've had value on this defense. Been a bit hit or miss, been a bit inconsistent, but they've had some value here. The issue is just, they feel like a young team that just has time to grow. And so I think some weeks they'll look really good and some weeks they'll look really bad. Number 23, the Carolina Panthers, interestingly enough, are here at 23. They're projected for 7.35 total wins, which is surprising to me. I mean, I would have thought that they would be very much lower, but it does kind of make sense. Their coverage unit has been, that's the main reason why they've been here is their coverage unit and their run defense. That's, 4 wins right there. But their offensive line's blocked very well. They've gotten tier 4 quarterback play despite having several different quarterbacks in there. It was that one PJ Walker game that really kind of elevated it from tier 5 to tier 4 is my guess, because he did play well. So you get some value kicking in there as well. So that's how I get to their totals. Then you have the Rams at 22, which is a bit of a surprise, right? They're a team that we expect to be better than 22. They were a team that their analytics, the analytical power rankings was higher on them than their record was all last season. So this time it's, the analytical power rankings is low on them. Well, why? I mean, the offensive line being tier 5 is rough. Stafford being tier 4 is rough. You certainly expect that to improve. The receiving core is inconsistent. A Cooper Kupp receiving core should not be tier 3. Like, you should be able to find a way to make that probably tier 1, but at least tier 2. Defense has, they've given up some stuff in the coverage unit area, which is something that I was worried about going into this season. One of the reasons why I was lower on the Rams than others were this season was because of, the loss of Darius Williams and what would they do to fix that. Depth has definitely been an issue for the Rams, but hey, maybe they'll add somebody, and I expect Stafford to play better, and I probably expect their offensive line to play better as well. The Miami Dolphins are at 21. This is a surprise, right? Because they're 4-3, and again, it's worth mentioning part of why they're here is because, Tua might be a tier 1 quarterback by himself, but they're not getting tier 1 quarterback value. They're getting tier 2 quarterback value because of the fact that they only had Tua for 4 out of the 7 games. Also, their offensive line's been the worst in football, according to PFF. Their coverage has been tier 5, which we came into the season expecting that to be tier 1. I mean, coverage is impossible to predict. It's always difficult. Year in and year out, it's very fluky. The rest of their defense has played well, though. Obviously, receiving core is very good. Tua, when healthy, has been great this season. So there's stuff to like about this Dolphins team. And again, some of this might just be they've been banged up so far. But through 7 games, analytics aren't crazy about this team. They find them inconsistent. Number 20, you have the Chargers, another team that maybe some people would have higher than this in their own personal power rankings. You have, again, Offensive line, it's been riddled with injury. It's been banged up, and that's been a big part of why it's tier 5. Herbert's still been a tier 2 quarterback, but the receiving core, again, the Keenan Allen injury has really, I think, hurt this receiving core, made it tier 3, and their defense hasn't been great. So they have value in several different places. That's why they're still mediocre, but that's why they're not better than mediocre. Number 19, you have the Denver Broncos, who have a tier 2 offensive line, but nothing else on offense. And that's kind of been the issue with the Broncos. Their defense has been awesome. Tier 1 coverage unit, that typically will get you, I mean, that's 4.26 wins. That's a lot of projected wins, but, they can't get too much higher just because they have really very little value on offense. Number 18, you have the Minnesota Vikings here, who, very good run defense, tier 1 there, so there you go. Kirk Cousins has been tier 2, that's typically where he lives, is the tier 2 quarterback range, tier 2 offensive line, tier 3 receiving core. So again, another receiving core you probably expect to be a little better. I think depth has been an issue there, perhaps, for the Vikings, but there's still enough they do well. They're maybe not what their record says, but they're still mediocre here, and I think that a lot of Vikings fans would probably agree with this. Like, they're winning games, so you can't be mad, but they have been a bit underwhelming in some of these wins, but hey, again, we're still relatively early on into the season. Things can still improve. Number 17, how about the Pittsburgh Steelers getting all the way up here into the mediocre tier despite being 2-5? I kind of agree with this. I don't think they're a terrible team. I think that they're a team that's okay, but they just keep losing games, which is usually the opposite of how Mike Tomlin teams work. But, they have some value in their defense. Their defense has had a little hit and miss. Again, that Bills game was kind of an anomaly. The Bills kind of just do that to people, but they have some value all across their offense, which is what gets them to here. There's still holes in this team, of course, but there's things to like about them as well. Next tier, we do have a couple more surprises. I mean, we're going to have surprises everywhere, right? Because again, it happens all the time on these power rankings things where there's a team that'll be somewhere and I say, that feels odd. I'm not sure I would have had that there. And then the question is always, am I right or are the analytics right? And it feels like it's, about 50-50. It's like half the time I'm right, half the time I'm wrong. Here, number 16, the Cleveland Browns feel like a team that I'm surprised are that high. But, I mean, you look at it, okay, they've given them tier 3 quarterback play. Maybe I'd be a little bit lower on that, but I can see that. The defense has started to pick it up recently, I would say. Tier 1 running game checks out. Tier 3 receiving core checks out. Tier 1 offensive line, to me, checks out. So I get why they're here, but they just keep losing football games. I think that's their biggest issue, is they've lost a lot of close games, which is why their record is worse than maybe they should be. Number 15, how about the Seattle Seahawks on the strength of tier 1 quarterback Geno Smith and tier 1 receiving core, although Metcalf did get banged up in that last game, but still, that's why they're here. They have a little value elsewhere with their offensive line playing better than it did when Russ was there. Good kicking game, so that helps them, but it's really just that, their passing game that's putting them into this section at the top 15. The Dallas Cowboys are a team that, again, you expect the quarterback play to get above tier 5 with Dak Prescott being healthy. Receiving core is fine. Running game's been very good for them, actually. Offensive line hasn't been great, but their defense has been with tier 1 pass rush and tier 1 coverage unit. That gets them to 9.77 projected wins. They're actually tied for 13. The Raiders and Cowboys have the same, so that should be tied, not a different spot. But anyways, let's get to the Raiders, who are another tier 1 running back team. The receiving core is now tier 2. Derek Carr is now tier 3. So, Carr got off to a really slow start in this season, but he's started to find his groove now, I would say. I could even see him jumping up to tier 2, which is typically where he lives in that area. Running defense and coverage unit has, you like the coverage to be maybe a little better. It's tier 4, but you still at least get some value out of your defense, and then the offense is playing solid as well. So according to this, they should be a playoff team despite their poor record. I don't fully disagree. I think they're a good team who's been underperforming. The number 12 team, the Atlanta Falcons, who are, there's things to like about this team. Their receiving core is tier 1. I think Mariota being tier 3 checks out. Their offensive line has blocked well. I agree with that as well. And they're getting, again, some value out of their defense. Not a ton, but you're getting some value out of that. So if this stuff can continue to play as well as it is, this could be a playoff team. Like, everyone's saying Tampa Bay is going to win the division just because it's a weak division. I'm not fully counting Atlanta out, and I think it's even possible, even if Tampa Bay does figure it out and go on a run where they win a bunch of games, I still think it's possible Atlanta could make the playoffs. I think it has a chance of happening. Number 11, the Baltimore Ravens, who, again, the analytics typically does not love the Ravens, but they're still having the Ravens as a playoff team here. They are 4-3, so this checks out. Because Lamar Jackson, PFF just never knows exactly what to do with Lamar Jackson, because, like, currently they're not giving him, they're giving him a tier 3 quarterback grade, which is fine, but then the running offense is also not tier 1. Feels like one of those should be higher. I'm not sure which one, but one of them should be higher. So they're kind of always a team that you have to put an asterisk next to when I make these lists, but still, tier 1 offensive line, tier 3 receiving core, you love that if you're a Ravens fan, because this has not been that good in years past. Solid coverage unit, solid run defense, and solid pass rush. So solid across the board defensively, really solid up across the board everywhere, and then you have Lamar Jackson, so they're projected for over 10 wins this season. And how about the Titans, who got off to such a slow start? They're now sitting here at number 10, and they don't even have tier 1 running back grade with Derrick Henry because of the slow start that he had. So obviously that we expect to be tier 1 by the end of the year, but their defense has played really well. You look at their defense, tier 1 pass rush unit. I'm willing to say I was wrong about the Titans pass rush, because even after losing Harold Landry, they've still been tier 1. So, okay, my bad on that one. I thought it would be worse. I was wrong. Coverage unit's been tier 2. Run defense has been tier 1. So this is a defensive-minded team who still has Ryan Tannehill, who's solid. The receiving core is built up of role players, but hey, they know their role and they can perform their role well. And you also have Derrick Henry. So this is a team that can win a lot of football games, and they're projected for 10. The Bengals here, and just to be clear, when I say projected for 10.89, that doesn't mean that's what I expect them to end the season with. It's just, if you were to play 17 more games, that's what your projection should be if you play exactly the way you played for the first 7 games. That's kind of the way to view it. The Bengals here at number 9, who, again, got off to such a slow start, but have really been playing much better football as of late. And, the 3 big categories are always quarterback, wide receiving core, and coverage unit. You look at historically, teams that have tier 1 in each of those categories are Super Bowl teams. Like, that's typically what happens. It's very rare for a team that has tier 1 in every one of those categories to not make it to the Super Bowl unless they get beat by another team who also has tier 1 in those categories. That's typically how it works. Well, the Bengals aren't tier 1 in all of those categories. They're currently tier 2 in quarterback play and tier 2 in coverage play, but they're still very good in those categories, and that's what's keeping them here, and I expect them to probably improve at least the quarterback play. I think Burrow will probably be tier 1 within a few weeks. That's my guess. Final tier, and we have a big head scratcher at number 8. The rest I think I can kind of understand to some degree, but number 8 is baffling to me. I don't know what PFF is doing. So this is, listen, I like PFF. I think PFF tends to be pretty good, and the reason why people tend to make fun of PFF is you only notice the bad takes they have, because the good takes you don't even really pay attention to. So that's always been my opinion on PFF. They have Andy Dalton as the 3rd highest graded quarterback so far this season, which I just don't understand. They have a tier 1 quarterback grade here for the Saints. I don't know. This is just one of those confusing things that I just don't understand. I'm not sitting here and saying that they're wrong, because I haven't watched all 22 of that Thursday game, so I don't know exactly what's happening there. But they gave him a pretty good grade in that one, which is why I am a little bit surprised, because, again, you couldn't stop turning the ball over, all that stuff. But at the same time, a lot of times when I go back and watch a tape after a surprising PFF grade, it actually makes some sense. So I don't think that Andy Dalton is a tier 1 quarterback. I don't think that they should get that high of credit there, but there still are things to like about this team. The receiving core has still played competent, and there is some solid value throughout the rest of these position groupings, like, again, run defense has been good, offensive line's been solid, you get some value out of the coverage unit, but the reality is, Andy Dalton, you maybe could take him down a couple of tiers, which would really take the Saints out of this spot, but would probably still put them as a fringe playoff team, which might be fair to say. So that just, again, I don't make the overall tiers. I leave that up to PFF, so that way I can kind of comment on it more freely, and it would take forever for me to try to make my own tiers. I couldn't make the videos if I did that. But in a way, I think that makes it more fun. I'm letting someone else make the thing, but then I'm also giving my opinion. So, who will be right? Will PFF prove to be right, or will I prove to be right? That should be interesting to see down the stretch. The 49ers are here at number 7, which, I actually think that there's a lot of optimism with the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey should certainly help that running game, which doesn't need a lot of help with the Kyle Shanahan scheme, so they usually overperform a little because of that. But, defense has played very well. Now it's banged up now, and some of those injuries, some of those guys aren't coming back anytime soon, but you still do have a lot of talent in that defense that should be able to perform well. You still have a lot of talent in that receiving core. I expect Garoppolo to be better than tier 4. I don't know how much better, but I expect him to be a little better. So, there's things to like about this 49ers team. I don't hate them being at number 7. I'm not taking the fact that they got blown out by the Chiefs when they had a lot of backups in too severely. Number 6, though, is a surprise. You have Aaron Rodgers' Green Bay Packers, which Rodgers has a tier 2 quarterback grade play here, and I agree with that. I think Rodgers has not been the issue. I think Rodgers has played well. Tier 1 running game, they actually like the offensive line, which is a surprise to me because I feel like there's been some issues there, but they like it, so maybe I'll have to go back and study that a little more. Coverage has played well. Pass rush has played well. Run defense leaves a little bit to be desired, but, they're a team with a couple of holes right here. And the biggest one, of course, is the receiving core, which they still have as tier 4 receiving play. So, okay, it's not the worst in football, but it's certainly not great. But to some degree, I think teams just know how to play this Green Bay Packers team. They know how to defend them, and the Packers have to figure out a way to counteract that. And that's part of it. I think what the issue is that the Packers, typically this is how much value it gets, but this is where kind of the mental side of football comes into play, and the human side of football comes into play, and even the coaching side of football comes into play, where teams know they have to have their A game on to beat the Packers. Teams know the best way to beat the Packers now, so they don't get the full value of that running game because teams are trying to stop the run. They don't get the full value of Aaron Rodgers because teams are, there's not enough getting open. So that's just an interesting factor here. Number 5, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, which, hey, PFF has Mahomes as a tier 1 quarterback. Feels like that's never the case, but no, they have him there. Receiving core's been tier 2, which, listen, I had some wrong takes about the Chiefs. I thought their defense would be more of an issue heading into this season, but I had some right takes as well. I thought that the receiving core would be better than people realized. I didn't expect tier 2, but I thought it would be tier 3. So it has, again, they don't have Tyreek Hill anymore, obviously, but you still have Travis Kelce. So you still have an elite option, and it still have plenty of different options who can come in and play. Good O-line as well, which again, also solid run defense and coverage. That puts them here at 11.87 projected wins, top 5 team in football. Number 4 and 3, we have a couple of surprises because I think, number 5, 1, and 2 being in the top 5 are fair. We'll talk about those, the rest of those in a second. But the Buccaneers at 4 feels like a surprise because I think we're all sitting here saying, you've seen how these past 2 weeks have gone, right? You saw that analytics, you understood that, but let's look at why they have it this way. First off, coverage has been tier 1. Now they got some injuries there, so that's maybe caused it to look worse these past couple of weeks. But throughout the season, coverage has been very good. I agree with that. Kicking's been good. Run defense has been okay. It's given up 2 big plays, but it has, on a consistent level, played well. Pass rush has been non-existent. But that's where, that's where 5 of the 12 wins they're projected for comes from. And if you count kicking, that's where close to 6 total of those wins comes from. And then they still have Tom Brady as a tier 2 quarterback, which, if you watch the games, you will know it was not his fault. They still have the receiving core as a tier 3 receiving core, which it has to start playing better, right? They have so many weapons there. That should not be a tier 3 receiving core, and that's been kind of an issue. But then also, they actually like the offensive line. It really is just, it's one position that's been the issue. It's the, Luke Gadecki and how he has yet to live up to the hype. They've now kind of started benching him, so we'll see what happens there. But that's been the biggest position. So they still like the Buccaneers, and we'll see how well that works out. So the Bucs and the Packers, 2 teams that a lot of people are very low on. The analytics is saying, hey, don't give up on just yet. We'll see if that's true or not. But how about number 3? Of course, the New England Patriots they're not going away anytime soon. People are too quick to give up on New England. They are. PFF always loves the Patriots receiving core is one thing I've noticed. The receiving core is actually the best in football right now, according to PFF, just because they have so many guys who can run different things effectively. Still don't know about the best in football, though, or even tier 1, so I'd probably have that a little bit lower personally. That's just my opinion on it. But tier 3 quarterback play, yeah, that checks out to me. Tier 1 offensive line, sure. Listen, everyone made fun of the Cole Strange pick. I'm not saying he's been awesome, but he's played all right, and the rest of the offensive line has played great as well, so that's why they're there. And then, of course, this defense has just been fantastic. Coverage has been really good. Run defense has been good. That's why they're currently sitting here. They just have a lot of different categories where they're getting over a win or over, close to 2 wins in most of these categories. I mean, they have 4 different categories where they're getting 1.85 or more wins. So, yeah, that's going to get you high up on this list. It has them at number 3. But not number 2 or 1, which is, the top teams in each conference. You have first the Eagles, who are still undefeated with tier 1 quarterback play, tier 1 offensive line play, tier 2 wide receiver play, tier 2 coverage unit. They're getting some value out of their front 7 as well defensively. And the only zeros on the board here for them is the running game. But with Jalen Hurts, that actually adds to the running game. It makes it better than what PFF would probably give them. So that should debatably be higher as well. They're 12.67, and to me, number 1, number 2, and you could argue the Chiefs as well should be up here, but this is these are the 2 teams that are, I think, going to be at the top of most power rankings. Number 1, though, the Buffalo Bills, who are, tier 1 quarterback play, tier 1 wide receiver play, and tier 2 coverage units. So that alone, that makes you a Super Bowl contender. If you have that, I don't care what else you have. If you have nothing else, you're still good. But they have some other stuff too. Tier 1 pass rush on top of it. Run defense has been solid for them. The only real issue is the offensive line has been streaky. So that's kind of your only real concern for Buffalo. But they are the the analytics have them as clear favorites, heavy favorites. Nearly 2 wins above the next closest team with 14.6 projected wins. It feels like it could be Buffalo's year, but you never know. It's football, and especially in today's day and age, it feels like upsets happen all the time. So that's what the analytics say. Where do you disagree? Why am I stupid? Let me know in the comments below. Listen, it's not my list. You can't get mad at me. I don't even choose who goes in which tier. You'll still get mad at me, but that's fine. That's part of the fun. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.